Hello, dear brothers and sisters. I am at the church. As you can see, I came here today to do some things, and since I was here, I decided to do the Bible study from the church. So I'm sitting near the Narthex doors, and you can see the church behind me, which I figured would be nice. I'll actually scoot over so you can see the altar. So today's gospel reading is about the healing of the deaf and dumb person who couldn't speak and couldn't hear. And we're going to start it in a second. So I will start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, now and forever, and to the ages of ages. Amen. Shine within our hearts, loving Master, the pure light of your divine knowledge, and open the eyes of our minds that we may comprehend the message of your gospel. Instill in us also reverence for your blessed commandments, so that having conquered all sinful desires, we may pursue a spiritual way of life, both thinking and doing all those things that are pleasing to you. For you, Christ our God, are the light of our souls and bodies, and to you we give glory, together with your Father, who is without beginning, and your holy, good, and life-giving Spirit, now and forever. Amen. Okay, so we're going to start study now. All right. It's chapter 7. We're at verse 31. Again, departing from the region of the Tyre and Sidon, he came through the midst of the region of the Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. Then they brought to him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. And they begged him to put his hand on him. And he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears. And he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. Immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly. Then he commanded them that they should tell no one. But the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, He has done all things well. He makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. So, dear brothers and sisters, this is a very important passage that we're learning about today, which we're talking about John the Baptist. We said that John sent his disciples to Christ, questioning whether or not he was the Messiah. And that's one of the things that Christ tells John's disciples, that go and tell John that the mute are speaking, the deaf are hearing, the ones who cannot walk are walking, the handicapped are being healed, and all the miracles that are happening. And we will see in few paragraphs down the passage that they will come and ask him for a sign, and Christ will be very strict with them in this sense. So, what is the beauty of this beautiful passage here? So he travels. Obviously, he goes to the other side, to the Sea of Galilee, to the Decapolis, Then they brought him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. So these are two important things. St. Paul says, how can we believe in God if we do not hear about it? So hearing is one of the most important parts of our senses in participation in our faith, because we hear the prayers, we hear the gospel, the good news, and that is essential for our salvation. So someone who was impaired by their ears were impaired and they couldn't hear, that would be very difficult for them to communicate to them the message of the gospel, the salvation, the news of the salvation. In today's world, that can be done by technology, by machines, by sign language, by all kinds of means that we have. At this time, 2,000 years ago, if someone was deaf or mute, they would first of all be considered that they are punished by God, and the second, that they will never be able to communicate with other people, except perhaps by some little signs that they may have developed by then. So this man is impaired. He cannot speak. We know that hearing and speaking are directly linked together, and that if someone can't hear, they don't learn how to speak well, or they don't learn how to speak at all. And it takes a long process of diligent work to help someone to learn. So here Christ obviously performs a miracle. And he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears. So this is a very unique way of healing. We see this similar kind of healing, kind of combination of these two things that we see. Him putting his fingers in the ears of the man who was deaf, and also spitting and putting his hands on his tongue and opening both the ears and the tongue. Most likely, this would be correct to say that this was in the result of also demon possession, that this person could not speak, or simply the result of our separation from God. All the diseases come upon us. Anything that happens to us is because we're separated from the source of life. This is something we need to know for sure, that when we say that the result of sin is sickness, is not because I have done something bad and I'm being punished for it, or I am it's like a karma in Eastern religions. That's not the case. All sin is separation from God, and because of the separation of God, all diseases come upon us. So that's where we are kind of seeing these things happening to human beings because they're separated from the source of life. And what does he do? He connects. He connects, he puts his fingers in the source of the impediment, and he makes a union with the person, brings this person to himself, and the parts that were impaired come in direct contact with the Lord, who is the Creator. To understand this a little bit better, we have the healing of the person who was born blind. In that story, we see that not only he puts his fingers in the eyes or on the eyes of the person, but he takes clay and he spits on the clay and he puts the clay on the eyeballs of the person who had no eyes. And the church fathers say that in this case, he shows the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all those people who were testing him that he's the creator of the world, that he can create like he created in the beginning from clay, from dust. He created Adam and Eve, He can create eyes for this person and put where it belongs. And in the same way, by the finger of God, in a sense, that's what we hear in the Old Testament law, that expression, finger of God, is the creative power and fixes the problem of this human being. These kind of problems can be in all aspects of our life. It's like a circuit that is broken, and it's a little wire that is broken, and the Lord can connect those wires and make us be able to see again. But that depends also a lot of that depends on our faith. We are to come close to God, and we are to be diligent, like the woman yesterday we spoke about, the person whose daughter was sick, and she continuously asked for help. And then we also need each other's prayers. These kind of people who were having this kind of problems were brought to Christ by someone else, and also sometimes other people asked on their behalf how for healing. So that's the kind of the message. And I think that in this particular small passage, the evangelist is putting is here because of the next passages coming, because the Pharisees and Sadducees and the scribes will come, and they will start questioning Christ to see signs. And what is very interesting, that the evangelist puts at the end of this passage that he has done all things well. He makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. What is that? Why is he doing it well? That's what their expectation was from the Messiah. That's, in other words, that he fits the criteria of the Messiah. He's done everything perfectly. And then the next passage is the feeding of the 4,000. I will go into that. And then after that, we see the Israelites, the people, the Pharisees and others, come and test him. And that is by asking for a sign. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar. Then his disciples answered him, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? Dear brothers and sisters, we only a couple of days ago studied the multiplication of the bread that fed 5,000 people. And here they have more bread and less people. And what is happening here is it shows that a human mind does not remember this amazing acts done by God, and that because of that they are coming. Because of that, Christ is repeating this events, these things, and he also wants to teach throughout his ministry that he is the creator and that he can take care of his people, and that he's here to claim them and they need to trust in him. This is kind of the repetition of the story of the Exodus, where the Israelites came out of Egypt, and Christ, God, the Father, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity, fed them 40 years in the wilderness. And the wilderness is a very beautiful place to be. It's first of all cut off from the rest of the world. It's a place of contemplation. It's a place where we can concentrate on God, and it's also a place of the unknown. So, and they're far away. So here we can see that Christ is talking about them being far away. They cannot reach to the society, to the civilization in a timely manner to get food for themselves. But he asks his disciples to feed them. And this also is very important passage as far as the physical needs are concerned, and that Christ took care of the people who were following him, even giving them physical food. Sometimes we may fall into the trap and the slippery slope of spiritualism, and everything is spiritual, that we give people advice, we give people sacraments, we give people rituals and services and this and that, but we forget sometimes about their physical needs, that we as Christians are there to reach out to people even for their physical needs, and we put that in a secondary category. Well, it's very easy to talk like I'm talking now, and talk your life away, but if someone is hungry, you need to feed them first. I already spoke about this in the past passage, that in the older cultures, if someone visited someone's house, the first thing that they would do is to feed them. Then they would even, after that, they would start asking them questions and so on and so forth. So the physical care is essential in the New Testament and in the whole Bible itself, that God feeds his people throughout their history. God gives them water in the desert. God gives them manna to eat 40 years. And here Christ repeats those little reminders for his disciples and for the crowd, to tell them that he is in charge, that he is in control of the situation, that they don't need to worry about. And these people were very hungry. They had followed him 3 days. He says, they have been with us 3 days. Imagine if you found the Messiah and if you were with him, would you leave? Even if you were hungry, you would not leave. So that also teaches us something very interesting about our life with Christ. Unfortunately, sometimes when we come to church, we become very impatient. Hunger is one of the reasons why we want the service to be over soon enough. And we have those, we have these beautiful coffee hours in the church, and we can't wait until the service is over so we can go and have our coffee and our donuts and our gulurias and whatever we have in the Orthodox Church. We have a tradition of making good food and all that stuff. So we see the parallel, that these people were following Christ 3 days, and then he feeds them, and he doesn't want them to faint. So I wouldn't do the service so long that some people faint in the pews and they don't get the food to eat. So that's why we kind of finish it in timely manner so people can go out and eat, because we come to church early in the morning and we fast usually because we have to receive communion, and you can relate to this, that the followers of Christ have been with him so long and they have gotten hungry, and Christ does not dismiss that. He takes care of them. He multiplies the bread and feeds them. What can happen how can a multiplication happen today? I just heard that a great philanthropist, a great donor of the Orthodox Church has donated some money to our parishes, because as you can see, this is not the service time, but usually during the services, the churches are empty because we don't want to jeopardize the health of our people to come in big groups and pass on the virus to each other. So we do the services and we broadcast them into their homes, which is a beautiful thing. I have said before in the service that instead of you coming into the church and going home, we are bringing the service into your homes. And God bless the the creators of the technologies, that we have that opportunity to do today. But the church is suffering on the financial side. We're barely making ends meet because I was just talking with our bookkeeper, the person who does the treasurer, about the finances of the church, and finding out that we are lagging back in all aspects of the financial situation. As you know, all churches usually run on deficit, and we find other means, festivals and other ways, donors, to bridge the gap. And especially now, people don't come to church, so they don't give their donations in a tray, and some people probably are nervous and they don't send their stewardship checks. So the church is kind of falling behind in the financial aspect. But this philanthropist, this great donor, donated some money. I don't know how much it is, but I have heard about it, that it can give assistance to churches. And the message that I received was that we should multiply this. How do we multiply this? We should ask our people to match this gift and say, if that person gave, let's say, for example, $100, then we are going to put another 100 on top of it. And it becomes the story of the stone soup, when everybody was poor and didn't have anything to eat, but each had one ingredient. And this man, a trickster, it says in the book, many of you probably have read this book. If you haven't, go find and read this very beautiful children's story. Goes knocking on people's doors and asking them to give him something to eat, and they all close the door and say, we don't have anything to give you. And at the end, he decides to figure out the way out for everybody, because nobody has something. So he takes a pot and puts some water in it and puts a stone in it, and he starts boiling it. And everybody comes and asks him, what is he doing? And he tells them that he's making stone soup. And this is stone soup. Is that going to be tasty? He says, yeah, it would be tasty if there were some potatoes. And one of the people says, oh, well, I have some potatoes at home. I'll go get it. So he gets the potatoes. And another person says, well, I guess it would be tasty if we put some carrots in it. So this person gets some carrots. And somebody had some beans, so they throw some beans in it. Another person had some oil, some salt and pepper, and everybody had an ingredient. They couldn't eat just that ingredient by itself. But at the end, what happens is that everybody brings those ingredients and puts in the pot, and they make this amazing soup, and everybody is fed. And everybody is satisfied, and the relationship, everybody had gone into their homes and locked the doors because of probably famine. I don't know, they were afraid of each other because everybody was hungry. This is an older story, so who knows? And this man was able to bring them out of their homes and help them to combine their gifts so that it will multiply. And then when it's combined, then it will feed everybody. But in separation, they could not take care of themselves as well. So that's what the situation is of the multiplication today. It's in our hands. We can multiply what we have by bringing it together with one another, and that's a very, very early Christian concept. In the early church, we find in the Acts of the Apostles that the disciples were receiving all the gifts from all the Christians, and the Christian community became so powerful and so strong that now, after 300, 400 years, they had become so popular, so powerful and strong that even emperors considered now to regard and to respect the Christian communities, not only for the financial strength and power, but also for their spirituality and of their holiness, of their holy life. But these things are all together. That's why I am kind of emphasizing this part where Christ not only takes care of people spiritually, not only gives them advice, not only gives them healing of the body, but also feeds the body, but also heals them emotionally, heals them psychologically, takes care of the whole entire human being. And that's what the goal of the church is. The church is here to reach out to individuals, to persons who are in need of any kind, and depending on our gifts, we can take care of those parts. And if the community works together, all gifts will be available for all people, and that's what's very important. I want to mention that yesterday we convened another parish council meeting and decided to do exactly that, to help people who may be in need. And by the generous donation of some parishioners and some organizations of the community, we have agreed and decided and implementing to create 100 packages, care packages, that will have basic essential food containers and stuff in them, dried food and canned food and other things, so that we can start giving to people who will have another month of social distancing, staying in their homes. So that's kind of the stone soup. One person initiated, another person joined, an organization joined, and it would be great if other people start joining this great donation process, so that we will have enough funds if someone needs, let's say, they're running late on their mortgage or on their rent or whatever, so we can give them some assistance in that way also. That will depend on if people come together, bring their resources and their gifts together, so that we can distribute it to the ones who have less gifts. So that's I think I'm going to finish in this, that these beautiful two events, one of healing the person's hearing and speech, and also multiplying the bread, shows us that Christ is taking care of us in fullness, in completeness as a human being. That He's the creator, that He takes care of our physical body. He is the healer, the doctor, the physician of our soul and body, and He also considers and has compassion. It says in this gospel, has compassion on His people. The eleos of God, the love of God pours out for His people, and He multiplies bread and feeds them all. That also is done for developing and for exercising the trust between Him and His people. And that is a lesson for us, that we need to know that God always takes care of His own. That's an expression I heard many years ago, when in fact I was in an immigration center, and someone saw that I was a deacon and made that expression, said, God takes care of His own. Don't worry about your situation. So that has always stayed with me, and I can witness throughout my life. I have seen over and over again that when situations are dire and difficult, then God steps in and helps, and then you're surprised. So what happens is there's a difficult situation, we get worried, God takes care of it, and we look back in awe and amazement. How did that happen? How in the world did that happen? And it happens over and over again. Every time there's a difficulty, that worry comes back, although we have all these examples of God taking care of us. So this is a second time Christ is multiplying the bread, and He has healed them over and over, or healed a lot of people in front of their eyes. But we will see tonight that they will come and ask for a sign. Dear brothers and sisters, it's at 30 minutes. May God bless you. Thank you for following. I figured it would be nice that I do from the church today, and the background is not an orange wall, but our beautiful icons of the holy saints, of Christ, of the Mother of God, of the Pantocrator you see above me, and all the other saints on the walls. May God bless you. I'll see you tonight.